Here we go.
Perfect.
Better. How are you?
I'm good today. I had quite a struggle yesterday afternoon, kind of last night. I popped a bit of a post on LinkedIn about it because I just think there's so much that is great and you share and that's amazing, but then, you know, people have got to be a bit more real about when they hit the wall or stuff that's going on that's challenging, and just felt really good about it today. And I had some lovely comments of people going, you know, hey, it must have been the day for it and they're feeling the same too, or just great sharing. And, you know, sometimes you wonder whether you should post some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm pretty open out there anyway. So and I'm much better today.
Yeah.
Oh, just
good
like
on you.
All of the things happened yesterday afternoon.
It's really good on you, because you're right. It's not it's not easy, because particularly when you're something I'm going to talk about, but when you are out there like we are,
yeah,
and then you make yourself more vulnerable,
yeah,
than you already are doing. It's like,
I love that, Pete, because I never really thought about it until I was listening to your podcast that kind of mentioned that, because I'm an oversharer in life. Like, that's just who I am. And so this is just like, yeah, this is something else I do. But you're right, it's just, it opens you up to so much more. And there are days where that's totally fine, and some of the messages that I'm sure you receive as well are like, great, thanks so much for doing that and saying that and giving me a different perspective to think about. But other times it's like, yeah. They think, I really thought that was going to connect with people, but no, they hated it.
Oh, it's funny. I don't find it actually from the audience. I find it corporately.
Right, really.
They misunderstand you. They don't understand what you're doing. And
I think
it's different at Kordia, because they chose me for this. Part of that. But it's still, it's hard for corporates to get their head around.
Because I agree. Like, I came out of my corporate, and that was another reason I wanted to go. Small company. The owner of the company here, I knew, like, he'd placed me in my last role, but I just needed to get away from those big corporate environments. I've done both, and I do enjoy both. And I think there's times for both, that I was doing so much that was putting, you know, a lot of authentic self out there, and some of it they did struggle with. They were like, okay.
Oh, well, it's done now.
It is. And what else has been going on with you? I saw that you did some speaking recently. I know you do a bit of that anyway. But some great events going on.
Yeah, May has been really busy, actually, which is great.
Yeah.
But it just makes it really, really busy, because I find with the speaking events, I mean, they do go in your diary ahead of time, but they're so far away that you don't really sometimes get track of exactly when they are.
Ahead, you're like, oh my God, it's here, and I haven't done anything for it.
Yes, and you never know what your other workload's going to be doing at the time. Yeah. So sometimes it just goes nuts. And then I'm like, oh, well, it's only temporary. Get through this trough, and then, you know.
Then on to the next.
Yeah.
I am going to hit play on this so that we get the full half hour. And then as people join, I will admit them. So I will spotlight you now. Fantastic. And start with the intro. So today we're honoured to have Hilary Walton join us for this Her Career Leader-Led Conversations Over Coffee event. I'm absolutely aligned to our Her Career values of inspiring empowered moments where women can accelerate career money network and advocate for mentoring. Hilary is even a mentor for our very own Jess Mason. Jess unfortunately couldn't join us today, but wanted to make sure I express just how much she adores Hilary. So it's out there.
Sweet.
As a director, digital influencer, digital security and business transformation leader, psychologist, author, YouTuber and podcaster, but not just that, wife and mother of 3, Hilary champions diversity in the hope to make our world a better place. Her diverse background in organizational psychology, ICT, risk management and security shows her immense skill sets above others with traditional technology backgrounds. She's worked on the London 2012 Olympics and Paralympic Games, leading the Information Security Program, and ticks that super cool box for time with MI5 in London. Believing that being digital requires a new set of behaviours and ways of working for people to learn and adopt, Hilary is a YouTuber, founder of a Digital Cultural Ideas YouTube show and podcast to help people understand this cultural shift happening right now. As usual, ladies, a housekeeping mention, please use the chat function for any questions or comments. We'll get to as many of them as we can. But for now, Hilary, thanks again so much for being here, and I will pass this over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Rosie. It's such a pleasure to be here. It obviously is a kind of a bit of a long intro with all those different things that I do, but I do that intros like that for a reason. Whenever I'm sort of doing my public speaking or presentations, I start by introducing myself as many things. And the reason I do that is because I feel like too much people can get pigeonholed as one thing. And I think along our careers, we really stress out about having to choose a career path, or, you know, am I going to be in the world of work or a mother? You know, it's this or the whole time, when actually it really, really should be and. And also, when you're making a career decision, it can change. You know, there might be some things you've got to do to progress in a certain direction, but there's nothing that stops you from changing career or industry later on. So yeah, I do that on purpose, and I do find for young people in particular that message really kind of hits the mark.
I love that. And it's for us, it's just an honor to have you here, knowing that you've had all of that experience and the young woman that can learn so much from that journey. So diving right on in then to some of the difficult questions, what have been some of your biggest career challenges?
I've actually had lots of career challenges, and I guess it comes down to that ethos, which I guess I've approached my career in, that you don't have to choose one thing. So, you know, every time I've changed industry or changed, you know, kind of career, it has been a challenge. And so I'm a big believer that, you know, when you start a role, you don't need to know 100% exactly what you're doing. In fact, for the first 6 months, you're probably not going to know really at all what you're doing until you get into an organization and you experience their culture and their processes and things like that, because all organizations are so different. So my career challenges have been kind of through changing industries and careers and then making mistakes along the way. And I'm obviously, when you're going through it, it's kind of hard when you feel like you're really screwing something up or you haven't read something right. But isn't that what careers are all about? Having experiences and challenges, the harder the better, because you learn more along the way.
I absolutely love that, because we get that question from a lot of young women, what if I make a mistake? And yeah, it's a learning lesson, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you shouldn't have all the answers. And particularly in organizations these days, as we kind of moving in this whole digital direction and agile, it's actually all about kind of trying to collaborate and crowdsource the ideas from other people. And that actually the idea is going to be way better if more people have had input. So yeah, I've kind of embraced that during my career as well, that I don't have to know everything, and that nothing is rocket science. It's rocket science maybe, but it's obviously really complex. But you can totally learn along the way, and you can learn from different sources. You might learn from formal study, that's obviously an option, but you could just dive into podcasts or YouTube or talking to people and taking them for coffee. I think the way we learn these days is, it's much different from in the past, and that you can get information so much more easily at your fingertips.
Yeah. That mistake piece, because what I hear from a lot of the young mentees is they have those perfectionistic traits. And you're a very high achiever, so obviously you've got drives there yourself. So was there a shift in you moving from perfectionistic to this understanding of evolution and growth and mistakes?
Yeah, I'm sure there was. And it's probably because I've had lots of mistakes, so that's my ethos now.
They are good.
But it is hard when you're in it and you're getting feedback that something's not going right, and you can take that quite personally. But I guess as I grow up and grow older, you start to realize there's more at play in organizations than just you and what you're doing. There is the whole political environment that's happening. There's the different personalities of people as well. And sometimes you just stumble into a situation that you didn't know was going to go that way. So you kind of need to be kind to yourself when that does happen, because that's always going to happen because we're interacting with human beings.
Yeah, that's fantastic. On the flip side of that, what about your successes? What can you share about those and what's really stood out for you?
Yeah, as you kind of saw my bio, like I've had lots of kind of cool roles. Although, you know, there's great stories behind those. Like particularly, you know, MI5, like wow, like that sounds amazing. The Olympics sounds awesome, and they were, and I could definitely go into stories around those as well. But at the moment, something I'm really proud of is it's actually my current role at Kordia, because it's kind of the first Chief Information Security Officer for the company. So that kind of is quite a you know, big step for them. And then I'm one of the few CISOs in the industry as well. So that's not lost on me either. And it is a really senior role. I interact with the board and management, and I actually look after operations for Australia and New Zealand. So it's one of the bigger roles I've had, but you've got to go for the big challenges and do that. And if you're feeling a bit scared, that's probably a good spot. One of the things I do really love about Kordia, and I feel really lucky to be with them, is that they're quite progressive and innovative. And let me give you a couple of cultural examples, because I'm really big into culture as a psychologist, and as a you know, I'm all into security culture and how you make people more secure through their behaviors. But a couple of cultural examples around Kordia is that I'm Christchurch based. And they actually made this role Christchurch for me, when most of the head office and corporate people are in Wellington and Auckland. And that was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, you know, during COVID, it made it okay for people to work flexibly and things like that. But yeah, it kind of shows that they were thinking bigger picture in terms of the company. And then the second kind of cultural example I have as well is they've really supported me and have recruited me as well to do this whole external ambassador piece. And I know we might talk about social media later. But, you know, they've seen the mutual benefit for them as a company to have like a brand individual on their team as well. And a lot of companies can't get their head around that, particularly at the leadership levels, because of ego, I think, most of the time. You know, because you do need to be pretty forward thinking to kind of take that on, and it's not that easy to manage. You know, there's kind of balances that have to be kind of worked through, but I think that's kind of the way that organizations need to think in the future. You know, that an individual can have a brand, and actually it can be quite similar to the company brand as well. So yeah, there's a couple of things that I'm proud about in terms of working for Kordia.
Yeah, and there's the risk and reward with that, right? So that individual brand, yes, very aligned, but it's like any partnership. It doesn't always have to be, I exactly agree with every statement or word, but you get a sense that there's an overall collaboration that lets you both go further.
Yes, yeah, and it's usually quite values based, I think, as well. If the values generally align, then you know, and obviously the brand individual needs to be professional and that kind of thing, then I don't know if you can go that wrong, and be a good person. I think that's super important. Kindness is something I'm keen to touch on as we go through this conversation as well.
Great. What are 3 key tips that you could provide to particularly our entry and mid-level women that want to accelerate their career money network?
It's got to be, the first tip's got to be around being gutsy. You know, I see people hold themselves back a lot, and they're kind of waiting for more experience under the belt, more lines on the CV, you know, more of this, more of that, when actually people can probably pretty much spring off from where they are and make a pathway forward. And I try and challenge myself on that as well, because, you know, myself to be gutsy, because it's very easy to dwell on your weaknesses and what you're not doing well, but it's your strengths that are really the one that you really should be focusing on, that push you forward. So kind of just being gutsy about who you are and moving forward. The second one is saying yes to opportunities. And I had some great wisdom at an event, heard some great wisdom at an event I was at where an older lady was talking about this. And she kind of said, you've got to say yes to opportunities as they come up, and bigger, harder, the better. And because the thing is, we have this tendency to overanalyze and we procrastinate and we talk to our, oh, should I be doing this? I'm not sure. And you kind of, very much procrastinate on making that decision. And if you procrastinate too long, then the decision might be made for you because the opportunity disappears. And so I think that's something we've got to get better at, is saying yes quicker and then kind of working out how to make it happen.
How, yeah.
Yeah. And then the third one is just asking. You never know when someone's going to say yes, and if they say no, does it really matter that much? If anything, you've gained a bit of market research about how you weren't ready for that role or didn't quite play in that area, but then it also starts a conversation about what you can do to get yourself there. So just asking. Actually, my father taught me that one because I joined the Air Force after university, and he said I should get the Air Force to pay for my master's degree. I was like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. They don't do that. They only do it for engineers and da-da-da. And then the next year, a junior psychologist came in. She wrote us a letter and said, will you pay for my master's? And the Air Force said yes. I was like, oh, I'm never going to make that mistake again. You've got to ask because you never know.
Yeah. And I think that all ties in it's so important, that self-qualification. So many people qualify themselves out of those opportunities. So that gutsy piece is fantastic advice. Absolutely.
And we need to be careful not to qualify other people out too soon as well, because sometimes that can happen. You should let people kind of prove themselves on their own worth rather than assuming they're not quite right or not quite ready.
Yeah. Well, that they don't have, sometimes it's just they don't have the clear objective of what's trying to be achieved. They've only seen step 1 and 2, and if they knew further where to go, they could perhaps plan their skills a bit better.
It's a really good point, Rosie.
Yeah. You've already had some great success, and I know this has changed for me in my roller coaster of a career, but what does success mean to you?
For me, it's what it really comes down to at the basic level, and then I'll kind of go up a bit. But it's really, for me, has been about loving what you do, and that it doesn't seem like work. And that certainly has been a theme for me out my career. And I know earlier on in my career, my husband was like, God, when are you going to make some money doing what you're doing? I was like, oh, but he could see I really loved what I was doing. So he's like, fine with it. And, but that has changed. But I think bottom line, if you're happy and you love what you do, then everything kind of is self-fulfilling. And if you get paid for it really well, then that's awesome as well. Obviously, that helps the family out.
That is helpful, yeah. Now, I know you're loving what you do at Kordia, but what's the next big career goal for you? What do you have in your next 5 or 10 years?
So I guess I look around me, and one of the things that I champion a lot in my messages is around this kind of new style of leadership around, and for me, it came from learning about what digital leadership was. And, when you're working in digital and digital transformation, the type of leadership required is very much about, giving them the outcome and then letting them work out how to get there, empowering people, trusting people, and empathy and kindness. And because when you're trusting people, you've got to be, empathetic and kind as you do that. Yeah. And then I've come to realize, God, it should just be leadership anyway. Like this command and control, and, unless it's a crisis, might be quite different. You might want some command and control then. But generally, my thing is championing leadership in the highest levels, which is kind and empathetic. And I just think that is like a really good leadership trait. So it's something I try and champion my children, and definitely in myself as well. So then I kind of go, well, I want to be in, leadership positions at the highest doing that, because I think, that's the pathway to success, basically.
Yeah, I think that's also a great example of if you can see it, you can be it. And we are seeing these leaders change in terms of behavioural types and the types of behaviour that's rewarded from an organisational and corporate view. And so seeing more servant leadership, more empathetic leadership.
Yeah, I think that is coming true. I think that is coming through, but I still think it's quite a slow burn.
And some industries faster than others as well.
Yeah, that's right.
This is a bit of a longer question. So last year you wrote a piece for the spin-off, and that was titled The Niceness Trap, Navigating Rules for Women Leaders in the Workplace. So a nice little segue from where we've been. What was important to you about sharing that content and for female leaders in the workplace?
Yeah, so because as a psychologist, I was sort of talking about this whole double bind dilemma that females have themselves in, where the traits that are traditionally associated with leadership, which is that kind of command and control and being aggressive and things like that, doesn't really kind of work for us, because we're supposed to be more likable and, you know, looking after people. And so we can be damned if we do and damned if we don't. You know, if we're too aggressive, then it's like, oh, what are they doing? And then if we're too likable, it's like, oh, well, they're not fit for leadership. And it's tricky. And I've experienced this myself in a sort of a slightly different way, and I'm sure other people have. In fact, I am mentoring someone else, not Jess, but on this particular piece at the moment, is that when you move, particularly in I guess even if you're just a minority, but I'm going to use the gender example, is when you move in a male-dominated industry or team, there's this really strong pull that I've certainly felt before to really fit in, and because you want to be liked, you want to be on the in crowd. And sometimes, particularly in my younger days, you know, I sort of laughed at a joke, or I went along with the office banter. It actually wasn't really supportive of me or women at all. And then you kind of go home that evening and you sort of think, oh no, I haven't really been true to myself. I should have said something. And so you get really disappointed in yourself because of that. And so you could kind of head into work the next day and you're sort of checking yourself. But it's important to maintain that diverse voice in the room and pick up that behavior, because then it doesn't change. However, it's really emotionally draining to kind of have to be that person doing that. And, you know, you don't want to be seen as difficult, but you need to kind of still be that diverse voice in the room, and not lose yourself in it as well. So it's really, it was about that kind of constant battle that females can have, and that I've certainly experienced as well.
Yeah, I'm going to add a link to that article in the blog that we write, because I think there were just some really nice pieces there, and it's a great articulation of what you were trying to share behind it.
Thank you, Rosie.
All right. I'd love to know more about your social media sharing. As a fellow podcaster, of course.
Yes.
We bonded over that. And I want to really know why you began that. I know you touched on it a little bit about this piece, but you know, what do you want to accomplish from it at the end as well?
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's, you know, I am really proud of that. Like I've sort of been I've always been on social media and posting stuff, but it was probably more like salesy stuff, pushing a particular business and things like that. And then it wasn't until I sort of started looking at this thing called Working Out Loud, which is kind of like a theory. I think it's a book. Sorry, there is a book by a guy called John Stepper. He's got some great resources on his website as well. But Working Out Loud is more about being generous to your audience, providing value, having a curious mind, thinking that you don't need to know everything yourself, but you can go on the journey to find it. And it's about that kind of reciprocal relationship between, you know, with you and your audience, that you give to your audience, and then you will get back in return. You don't have to kind of do the hard sales thing kind of the whole time. So I was kind of thinking about that, and I was doing some digital transformation at a previous organization I was at, and I stumbled across digital culture. So, you know, with evolutions in technology and the internet, like it just requires different habits, different behaviors, different ways of communicating, different ways of thinking. And how do I get people to do that? Because it's different from what they're normally used to. And so that's where this whole digital culture ideas podcast and YouTube channel came from, because I think it's one of the biggest, most massive, kind of shifts cultural shifts that we're having to make. And it's obviously been accelerated with COVID and things like that. And I remember when I first, and because it's digital culture, I was like, well, I've got to do digital stuff. So YouTube video, it all made sense. And when I first told people about it, some people were like, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. That could go wrong, couldn't it? Or like they just didn't get what it was all about. But you know what some people are like. They're always going to be like that. And yeah, so rather than let them kind of stop me, and even my husband, when I explained it to him, he was like, oh, really? You want to do that? And I sort of had this discussion with him, and I said, look, if I don't do it, because I feel it's something I need to do, and when I get passionate about something, I need to give out, because that's what I did with security culture in MI5, and then I ended up writing a book on security culture. So this was the next evolution of writing a book, but instead it was in podcast and YouTube and video and written form. And I said to him, look, if I don't do this, I'm going to resent you. Because he's like, this is going to take you away from the family and me a little bit more, because that's a very busy thing to do. But he didn't want me to resent him, so yeah, he has very much supported it. But it hasn't been easy, and as I talked about, some people don't get it, and particularly kind of senior people with egos and things like that, it's quite hard for them to understand how someone down here can be doing this stuff, and how does that work from a employment perspective or organizational perspective. And then I guess that's when the whole tall poppy thing comes in, I think. But tall poppy syndrome, we know that's about the other person, not about the person who's achieving themselves. It's more a reflection on what the other person's going through. So in my empathetic kind of way, I try and be kind of understanding of that. But yeah, I'm proud of what I kind of achieved there, and the value that I've been creating. And where do I want it to go? I want it to be helpful for individuals and organizations as they develop their digital capability. I want to build more of a community around it, and kind of just learn more about this as I go along. And I don't know where it will end. It's a passion project. I'm not making any money. Like, it's not a business. It's not anything. I'm aware. It's just fun. And it is fun. So everyone should have a podcast and a YouTube channel.
It is. And I think it's just a really great takeaway of it, that you do put this energy in, and you want it to be something that can go out and share this knowledge. This is a great way for you to be able to share knowledge and have people consume that, and see a different side of you that necessarily they don't see when they're working with you every day, or those conversations that you're able to have.
Absolutely. And it's been amazing for expanding the network and just meeting more fascinating kind of people like yourself, Rosie. I mean, we wouldn't have met if I hadn't been doing that stuff.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it is very cool.
And it's great for you to share that there is, still that vulnerability, and sometimes, although we do it for passion, there are days where it does get you down. I shared just before we got on this call, my LinkedIn post, and I think that there, particularly for senior women like us, it's important to show that vulnerability in those times, but to also know there are tribes around us that support us. So, you're very gracious in your words directly after that, and I've had some fantastic feedback, and I know that it's one of those areas where the more that you connect with people, we've connected now, it's great to have you as part of my network, and certainly all the great work you do, I'm incredibly inspired by, and that helps, I think, overcome some of the tall poppy syndrome and the cutting down by others. And although we're wired, as you would know, psychology wise, to look for the negatives, it's just important to find those positive influences as well.
Absolutely, and totally likewise, Rosie. And maybe if I could pick up on that vulnerability piece as well. Like, I do feel very vulnerable doing this, because you are so really, really out there. And for me in my industry, one of the few females doing that, like, whoa, talk about standing out and putting yourself, probably putting a big target on yourself potentially. But then I go, nah, they're not important. I try not to feel that judgment, and then when it feels right and you're enjoying it, you just kind of carry on anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And we had a great question from Michaela, of course. How do you balance all of the things that you do?
Yeah, I sometimes struggle to answer this question because I don't think I answer it very well. But I basically I try to judge myself over a longer period of time, not on a daily basis. Yeah. Because you know how it's always like it's kind of like a point system. Have I done enough of my job, my hobby, my family, my friends, my fitness? Like on a daily basis, you're always going to fail, and the points aren't going to add up in the right direction on at least one of those things. So instead, I look at what I'm doing over a week or sometimes even a month. Kind of think, because there's always peaks and troughs with everything, but over the month, am I generally happy that I've, fulfilled my work duties, fulfilled my, family and friend, family duties, and kind of hung out with my friends enough, and I try and do that. So I guess it's about trying to be quite kind to myself, and then I guess it also comes back to the fact that I do get a lot of joy out of what I do. Family, obviously, that's an easy one. But then the podcast and the YouTube channel and work, I really love kind of all of it. So I do have this kind of internal desire to do more of those. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that helps other people, but yeah, it is difficult because even if I think of my maternity leave, so I finished the Olympics with a big belly over in London, came back to New Zealand. But before I'd left London, I got myself a thing with a publisher to write that security culture book. I'd already kind of set up something to do during my maternity leave because, that's not busy. And there were times during maternity leave where I couldn't do anything other than baby. And then there were times where actually baby slept for hours and I could do stuff. And I thought I'd get that done in one maternity leave, but even though that was a year-long thing, but that wasn't enough. So I finished it off in my second maternity leave, so there's something about me that does pull myself to do things to keep my toe in the world of work or in those things I'm kind of interested in. And also when I had my third baby, I had just accepted a future directors program thing, and I with Christchurch City Holdings down here in Christchurch, and so I was placed with Regenerate Christchurch board as kind of like a intern or future director. So I had my baby while I was on that board. They had a baby in the boardroom policy, which was amazing. Yeah. So my daughter came to board meetings for I didn't go, sorry, I missed a few board meetings initially, and then she came, and then I got to a point where I didn't want to bring her anymore, and she was old enough to have a couple of hours with a babysitter. So I have been pulled to doing kind of things that do keep me in the world of work, but I'm also very conscious of the family stuff as well. But that's where my mindset is in terms of you can do all of that. It's not either or, it's and. Yeah. And there's always ways and means, and if you're paying for childcare, it's gonna suck because you're gonna feel like you're not earning much money for the family. It's just going towards childcare. But if you're interested in working and you want to do that, then actually it's only short-term pain, financial pain, and then out the other side, so much better in terms of future earning potential, career opportunities, all that kind of stuff. So I think often we get into these things and we think and we think, but then that just limits some of our future sometimes. So hence the many things. Yeah, it kind of goes across a number of different subjects.
I'd love to back that up with the childcare piece. So we were lucky enough that my sister-in-law at the time, she was off work with her 2 children. So for the first year and a half, my son was with her. But I was back at work in 7 months. We kind of needed to, but I also knew that it made me a better mother. I was fulfilled as a person going back and working. So kind of to that piece, as you're saying, there's elements that can make us a bit more whole human, and then also bring a happier person home to the family.
Yes. And it's just all about finding what's right for you, isn't it? Because that was right for maybe you and I.
Didn't want to
Not
do
everyone.
that at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we have hit 1 o'clock, and we still had loads of questions. But I thought you've prepared and everything. But I just wanted to thank you so much for being here, and we will have this up on YouTube and written up, but I know it's only the beginning of our little relationship as well, which is fantastic. Thank you for sharing everything you did.
You're
Hilary.
so welcome. Sorry, you're so natural that I just keep talking and talking. So thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope it is helpful for other people as well. Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you so much. That's all. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.